One of the big races here in Dane County is the Madison mayoral race, and we have team coverage with NBC 15's Colton Molesky and Cameron Kelly, who are following incumbent mayor Satya Rhodes Conway and the challenger Gloria Reyes, respectively. Let's start with Colton.
I spoke just a few minutes ago with the mayor's campaign team. They tell me that Satya Rhodes Conway right now spending some time with her mother, who came into town to support the Rhodes Conway campaign for re-election here in Madison. I was also told that earlier today the mayor was actually on UW's campus encouraging students to get out and vote today. Now, earlier today when she cast a ballot, she actually told NBC 15 a little bit about what she hopes to accomplish in the coming months if she wins re-election. She wants to address a few things, including public safety, housing, climate change, and equitable economic development. Again, those are some of the priorities she has coming back to office if she wins re-election. Her last message to Madison voters, the mayor asked people to brave the weather and vote.
To encourage people to get out and vote. There's some really important races on the ballot. We have a very important state Supreme Court race, and then there's a number of referenda on the ballot that people might want to look up before they head to the polls, and some really important school board and city council races. So lots of things to weigh in on.
Now, it's really empty here, but later we're expecting a lot more people here at Turnkey. This is where the mayor's election party will be held. Things kick off at 7:30, and she'll be here with supporters watching those election results roll in throughout the night. And we'll be here throughout the night as well, giving you updates on that race, giving you the latest information, what we're hearing from her campaign throughout the rest of the evening. In Madison, Colton Molesky, NBC 15 News.
Our team coverage continues now with NBC 15's Cameron Kelly, who is live on the west side of Madison following the mayoral challenger, Gloria Reyes.
In the last hour, I talked to the Gloria Reyes campaign, and they tell me that at 8:45 today, Reyes went to go vote, and that time was a special time for her because she was able to bring her daughter. And after that, she immediately went to the UW campus to talk to students and to encourage them to vote. And one thing we know about Gloria Reyes is she loves being in the community, and she values the opinions of the public. So this is something that we currently know about her. And another thing about Gloria and about this entire race is that it's monumental that this is the first time two women have went head-to-head during a general election for Madison mayor race. And if Gloria wins tonight, she would be the first Latina mayor. But we will leave you with something that she told us earlier today before polls close.
It came down to really talking about the issues impacting Madison. I mean, I think, we only get 4 years to talk about these issues, and people have been really concerned about a variety of things. And so it really gave an opportunity for me to go out and hear from the voices of our residents.
And what we know right now is that I am at Caspian Grill, and the coverage does not end here. I'll be here all night, and hopefully things start cooking up as those results roll in. Gloria will be here around 8 p.m., and that is when things kick off. But for now, in Madison, Cameron Kelly, NBC 15 News.
Cameron and Colton, thank you.